There we go. We're live. We're live.
Hello and welcome to Moreness-Culture. Good morning, Syl. Good morning, Grain. And good morning to
Honest.
everyone who is going to join us live and recorded. How are you?
I am most well, Beena. How about you? How about you?
Getting better, getting better. Things are
Yes,
happening, and of
I'm
course, like we
happy to be
always,
here. I'm happy to be here, Beena. Happy to
yes,
be here.
yes,
Very
yes,
happy to be
yes.
here.
So I was not able to do the live yesterday, and of course, day before yesterday, but things were happening. But it was just like part of things, a part of life. Things sometimes happen,
Yeah.
not serious, nothing miserable.
Stuff happened.
Just stuff happens, and we move on. And this is what is happening. Anyway, I was missing these lives because for me, they are always something which nourishes my awareness, which nourishes my soul, and which nourishes my mind, my thought process. So a lot of nourishment for me. How can I miss that? So this is something I was missing. Anyway, while we are here, what we are doing, all the newcomers on TikTok and Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, we are doing capital R reading. Capital R reading is a process. This term is specifically why we say that,
Yeah.
why we emphasize on capital R reading, because this is the process from Way of Impeccability and Moreness-Culture, in which we do not only do the reading, the regular, okay, thorough reading of the book or any content, but also we go beyond. We try to connect with the intent, not just the story or the happenings in the book or the content, what has been said in words, but going beyond that and connect with the energy and the intent of that person who has been sharing, and also the overall
And
context. Yes, when I'm saying
yes,
overall
yes.
context,
And the
it's just like
implication.
connecting. Exactly, and the implication. Thank you so much for giving me the precise term. Yes, and connecting with the implications also. So this is what, of course, it has so much more than that, because not only you are connecting with the intent of what has been shared, but also connecting with the intent of that person who has been sharing all these things, and also connecting with the
Oh,
intent, the universal context, how it connects with the universal intent, which is a big, huge deal.
yeah.
And once you understand that, you don't need to memorize anything, but you don't need to actually, like, okay, really pay attention to the words and use. They are important. I love words. And of course, precise, appropriate usage of vocabulary is a big, huge deal for me. But it
Yeah.
becomes like less important when you understand the importance of intent. And once you connect with that, once you understand that, everything else become like a superficial, even though they
Yes.
are important, because this is the core, this is the
Yes.
soul of that thing. Like, okay, like we have a body, and then we have a soul,
Yes.
human mind. Intent is a soul of that story, that book. And we
Exactly.
always have the
Exactly.
intent to connect with the soul, not just connecting superficially. So this is what we are doing. And right now, nowadays, we are busy with doing the capital R reading of Carlos Castaneda's books about Don Juan. And we have a very specific intent, very special intent, I must say, to connect with Don Juan, because this is something very interesting for me. And I don't know how, but just having this clear intent in my mind, Don Juan has sent multiple messages to me that, okay, yes, he's there.
Wow.
Yes, it happens. Like, okay, I had no idea that crows are a big, huge deal in Don Juan's books, and like, okay, Carlos' books about Don Juan. And
Yeah.
before starting this, I had a very, very interesting. I don't know how to say that, interesting
You
happening.
had an
Okay, with
experience.
yes, experience. Yes, exactly. Very
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
experience with crows. He literally saved me from attacking. Like, okay,
Yeah.
the eagle, the big, huge bird, was attacking me. Not only he
Yeah.
saved me, but also he made it sure. Okay, I'm saying he, maybe she, I'm just saying they. Okay, now they made it sure that they are hushing away that eagle. And then when I say thank you, when I turn back and I say thank you, I felt that a virtual nod there. That yes, okay, accepted. So something
Yeah.
was happening, and I had no idea that
Connection. You
crows
had
are going to
very,
be.
very
Say it again.
capital C connection. Yeah, you had
Yes,
very clear capital C connection.
yes. And after that, also so many things happened in during this whole experience that I got the opportunity to to focus more on Don Juan's sharing's intent. Again, I'm saying that, okay, yes, he shared a lot of medium,
Yeah.
masculitos and power plants and other things, but the basic intent was to extract moreness and to have this understanding that
Yeah.
in life we have way much more than what we only see, hear, and touch. There
Exactly.
is a world which goes beyond our normal senses. And
Yeah.
this is what he
Yeah.
was sharing, to connect with that world beyond this sensory world. And that is
Yeah.
something very huge. So
So we
yes,
can
this
make an
is
update. Beena, we
yes,
can make an update.
yes,
We like to say from Way of Impeccability and in Moreness culture, one of the sayings that you'll hear say regularly is, the world does not work the way we think it does.
yes,
We can also add to that to say, there's more to the world than we think there is. Capital M more.
exactly.
There's much
Yes,
more to the world than we think and imagine, right? So much more, so much more. I mean, most people know this, of course, when you say, well, duh, but there's even more than you think there is, right? And it's attainable, it's accessible. That's the other point. This is Moreness culture. Yes, Moreness culture is about connecting to the Moreness, hence the word Moreness culture. And Moreness, we mean that which is beyond the is important or valuable or whatever. I mean, what do our lives revolve around? Status and ego and wealth and survival and all of this stuff, right? There's so much more to life than that. Yes,
yes,
so much more, so much more.
yes, yes. There is
Yeah,
always
brilliant,
more.
brilliant. There
There is
is
always more.
always more, precisely. Always, always. And whenever you think you've connected, then there's even more than. That's the brilliance of the universe, right? And when in Moreness culture, we want to understand something very clear, that Moreness culture is aware that that the intent, you were talking about intent, right? And how magical and potent and profound connecting to intent is. And what a big, big deal this is. How revelationary it is to connect to intent. How it opens our eyes, our awareness, our understanding, everything when we start connecting to intent. Right? Not just our own intents, not just the intents of other people, but the intent of a situation, the intent of a circumstance, right? For instance, in the Carlos books, we are looking at, yes, Don Juan's intent. We are also looking at Carlos's intent, but also we are looking at the universe's intent and how it works things through them and in circumstances. But we're also looking at the intent of the books themselves. They also have an intent, right? So when we understand this and we look at the intent in every possible context, right? And from every possible perspective, we see a profoundness that we don't see otherwise. Like I said, the books have their own intent. It's very peculiar that those books came about. It's quite anomalous, right? It's really quite extraordinary that we even have these books. And what's even more extraordinary is Carlos's peculiarity as an individual, which makes these books happen. It's something truly, truly exceptional. And when we understand all this, we start to see a magic and, of course, a moreness that is in play. And part of Moreness culture is to understand the intent of the universe. What is the intent of life? Intent of life, according to Moreness culture, is the enhancement and development of awareness. You can, that's a particular phrasing, but take the underlying idea behind that. Yes? The intent of the universe is to develop, enhance awareness, grow awareness, foster awareness, can't give awareness, because then it won't be awareness, then it'll be a program, right? So awareness has to come about by itself. However, that doesn't mean you can't create the circumstances and make the environment and the context as appropriate as possible in order to enhance and develop awareness. Now, if you deliberately say, I want to enhance and develop my awareness, now you're in attunement with the universe and your whole life changes, right? And you see all the things that happen in life. Oh my goodness, before I thought these things were like just random, or even sometimes think they were negative, but oh, I see now it's to enhance and develop my awareness. It's a gift, in other words, capital G gift. It's magic, it's moreness, and your life changes. Yeah? And your life changes. You start to see that what you thought was random is. But again, keep in mind, with awareness, you cannot force awareness. The moment you try and force it or give it, it becomes a program, right? And then you don't have real awareness, then you've just got a program. So it's like with AI. You cannot make it deliberately. You can make a very sophisticated program that imitates awareness, but actually truly aware, right? This is something that has to happen of its own accord. Very important. However, the universe is doing everything it possibly can to stimulate and assist and help awareness in any way it can to grow on its own, right? But we've got to do that on ourselves. But when you set this as your intent and you consciously and deliberately make an effort to enhance and develop awareness, you start living in attunement and everything starts to assist you and you start to live an incredibly profound and magical life, right? Very big deal. Now, when we look at that again, this is something from Moreness-Culture that we are going to bring to our reading of Carlos and Don Juan. We're going to look through these lenses. When we look at the entire book series, the entire interaction between Carlos and Don Juan, from the universe's point of view, from life's point of view, yeah, then we're going to see something very profound. And this is very magical. So let's go there. Let's go and read. Beena, remind me that whenever I comment, yeah, whenever I'm making a comment or you make a comment, that I stop the screen share. Okay?
Okay.
It's just something for TikTok. They think I'm inactive because it's only seeing the static screen. It doesn't see me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So yeah, I'm going to try something different today. Instead of screen sharing, I know it's going to mess it up a little bit for the Instagrammers, but I'm going to do the entire screen and see if it times me out, because it keeps track of the movement of the video. And when I do the screen share and I only screen share to the app specifically for reading the book, then it doesn't see the movement on the video. See? And it says, oh, you've been inactive. No, I haven't been inactive. You just have noticed my activity. To load. And we are, Don Juan, this whole second book is called A Separate Reality. And Don Juan, Carlos had his apprenticeship, at least the first part of it, right? And then he left after a particular incident. And he came back after 2 years after publishing the book, and he wanted to show Don Juan the book. And then he got drawn in again, and now we're in the second cycle of the apprenticeship, right? We're in 1968 now, right? Because the first one was from like 1960 to 66, more or less, right? And we are seeing Don Juan's focus is shifted, and it's much lighter, more playful, more joyful, right? Not as serious as the first one was, because that scared Carlos too much. He couldn't handle the seriousness. And come on, load, will you? This is the book here now. I'm just waiting for it to load, and look how long it's taking. Well, yes, I have to trust that it will load. Maybe I should just refresh it, I guess. And what the key, though, is in this book, the entirety of the book is focused on one thing only. And this is to get Carlos to capital P perceive. What does this mean? Beena? Sorry, while I'm struggling
Yes.
with my coughing here.
Yes. Okay.
Can you elaborate
I
a little
cannot.
bit what capital P perceive?
Okay. Yes. because I cannot see the screen right now. It is black for me. Anyway, for me,
Yeah,
capital
yeah. Yeah.
perceiving is this something like, because I understand this at least a bit about this from capital R receptivity, of course, because that was the idea that okay, and actually
Right.
this idea was not originally from me, because when I started from in the beginning, where I started with Way-of-Impeccability, and what I was doing, Syl mentioned that you are not actually just reading this, you are doing this, and you have this receptivity. And then I realized that yes, what is different between me and, of course, me doing Way-of-Impeccability, and I was doing some other things also in my life. Why I was so indulged, okay, indulge is a negative word, but okay, why I was so consumed by Way-of-Impeccability, why I was so passionate about that, why it was like becoming my 24/7 kind of a thing. And then I realized that this is the capital R receptivity, which means that I was not just reading that, I was not just learning that, I was perceiving that also. And perceiving is something
Mm,
going beyond, okay, your normal senses, when you are just don't logically try to
yeah.
make sense of things, but you actually perceive the energy of it. Because what we are
Yeah.
as a soul, we all are energy. And when we connect with something, it can be even something which is non-living thing. If you connect, everything has energy. And when you connect with that energy and you perceive that energy, it means that you are connecting spiritually, even with
Yeah.
non-living things. You are connecting with them spiritually. It can be a simple chair. Okay, yes. It also
Right.
has that
Right.
energy, because what is the start? That was the tree. And of course, it has that energy. And now it is in the form of chair. But you can connect with that energy. And understanding this thing, this perceiving something, is
Yeah.
actually connecting with that energy, not going by the shape, design, colors, or physical appearance or existence. No, perceiving it is connecting via energy, connecting spiritually, connecting with the soul of that thing, or anyone, of course, it can be. So I tried to do that. It was a very unusual, very unique kind of experience I had. I started focusing on that, okay, I'm going to perceive energy directly. I'm not going to do it again, at least so far. This is my idea that I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I started feeling for few days, it was like I was made of some pixels. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a kinetic sand.
Wow. So brilliant. Yeah.
Yes, it was like
Yeah.
you are made of some kinetic sand, if you know that what it is. It can come together, but it is also just based on
Yeah.
particles. And that was the feeling. And I was feeling like even that kinetic sand has the properties of mercury. I think that okay, now I'm able to describe it more
Wow.
precisely. So just imagine kinetic sand, and then imagine it with some mercury properties. This is what I was feeling in my own being. So I don't know, maybe I was not clear that which energy I want to perceive directly. I just say I want to perceive energy directly. And I was just
Wonderful. Won-
imagining, I was just perceiving my own energy directly. And this is what happened with
Yeah.
me. Anyway, that was a very, very unusual experience. I still feel that, okay, I don't know what it was. So perceiving
Well,
is,
more to come, Beena. So keep that
yes,
in mind.
yes,
And we're going to see. So we're going to get in touch with more examples of capital P perceiving. Capital P
yes,
perceiving is very difficult to comprehend because it is outside of what we normally know. It is completely different. It's an alternative paradigm, really, really extremely. So we can only kind of hint at it, guess at it, more or less it. But we're going to get some. So we're going to get multiple perspectives, understand that each view that we get of capital perceiving is not actually the thing itself, but we can get an idea of the thing itself by putting all those perspectives together and allowing our brains to create it, right? And to know that it is something that we have to experience in order to know. Right? Talking about it is not the thing itself, right? So Don Genaro does something that that prompts, that leverages Carlos to actually capital P perceive, right? We're going to see more or less. It's a start. It's a start. So Carlos, they're busy talking about stuff, and Carlos is taking notes, and Don Genaro is quite amused at this, right? And so, do you want to read, or do you want we can read
No,
together, or you
please.
want me to read?
No, please, you read.
All right. Okay. Don Genaro seemed to have noticed my confusion. He clapped his hands a couple of times and rolled on the ground again. Apparently, he wanted me to watch him. What had at first appeared to be rolling on the ground was actually leaning over in a sitting position and touching the ground with his head. He seemingly attained his illogical posture by gaining momentum, leaning over several times until the inertia carried his body to a vertical stand, so that for an instant he sat on his head. Now, this is what Carlos suddenly saw Don Genaro doing something weird, and all of a sudden Don Genaro's on his head, but with his legs crossed, right? Sitting on his head. And Don Genaro is making a point metaphorically. And Carlos doesn't quite get it. His note-taking is like sitting. I said, we'll see as we come along here. So just understand the sophistication involved. That's my point, right? That there's multi-layers to what Don Genaro is doing. He's not just leveraging Carlos to break his perception of how the world works, right? He's also giving him an opportunity to perceive directly. He's also giving him a metaphorical idea, a suggestion to say, hey, Carlos, you're a little crazy in what you're doing. Right? It's like sitting on your head, literally like that. It's just not very sensible, right? It's peculiar. It's upside down, in other words. In verse. When their laughter subsided, Don Juan continued talking. His tone was very severe. I shifted the position of my body in order to be at ease and give him all my attention. He did not smile at all, as he usually does, especially when I tried to pay deliberate attention to what he's saying. Don Genaro kept looking at me as if he were expecting me to start writing again. Pay attention to Don Juan and Don Genaro from a sophisticated point of view. When Carlos says Don Juan is being severe, don't just assume that, oh, he's reacting to things. No. Everything they do is deliberate. May I emphasize that. Every single thing they do is deliberate. Everything. There's a purpose and a point to it. If Don Juan is severe, it's because he feels it's appropriate and necessary to be severe. Okay? Right? Makes sense?
Yes.
Very important, right?
Yes.
So, because he's not reacting according to the emotions and emotionality and responding to Carlos, as Carlos thinks, he keeps interpreting Don Juan's behavior according to normal ways of behaving. There's nothing normal about it. Everything they do is deliberate, right? And Carlos cannot comprehend such deliberateness yet, yes? I mean, I know in my life, I really make an effort to be deliberate in almost everything I do. And it's difficult sometimes because when you interact with people, they assume that you're behaving for whatever reasons. And so it can cause inadvertent problems sometimes, right? Don Genaro kept looking at me as if he were expecting me to start writing again, but I did not take notes anymore. Don Juan's words were a reprimand for not talking to the plants I had collected, as he had always told me to do. He said the plants I had killed could also have killed me. He said he was sure they would, sooner or later, make me get ill. He added that if I became ill as a result of hurting plants, I would, however, slough it off and believe I only had a touch of the flu. Very critical point that Don Juan is making here. He's indirectly saying this is because we interpret the world. So when stuff happens, because we have a worldview and the world works according to our worldview, at least we think we know more or less how the world works, well, it must be the few. How often do people say, well, it must be? Says who it must be? It's complete nonsense to say it must be. There's no must to it at all. If you're feeling in a particular way, there's 1,000 reasons why you could feel that. To say, oh, it must be the flu. That's just because you can't imagine anything else. Yeah. See, so very
Yes.
important point here. Change your way of perceiving the world itself, right? And this ability to package things according to your description is a very powerful ability. It's very limiting, but it's also very powerful. Right? The two of them had another moment of mirth. Then Don Juan became serious again and said that if I did not think of my death, my entire life would be only a personal chaos. He looked very stern. I bet you anything his sternness is for the mirth and enjoyment of Don Genaro. They they're having fun with Carlos because Carlos is in such a bubble nincompoop. It's the only way they can really deal with him. Because if they deal with him for the idiot that he is, it's going to be a miserable affair, right? So they have to have fun with him. Right? So this point of thinking about your death, I was explaining in the interview podcast that I did with Jill Nicolini, right? It's a big thing that's been going on for a long time now, right? And so every Wednesday I do this. I was talking about self-conception. And I was saying that, to have a self-conception, for instance, of a spirit warrior. Why warrior? It has to do with violence. A true warrior's mandate is peace. Yeah? They're just able to do everything. But of course, violence is the last resort because violence is the easy way. And it's very corruptive. It's like power. It easily corrupts you. But still, warriors live with death. Death is their ally. Death is their friend. Death is their companion. Why? Because death sharpens you, keeps you alert, it makes you pay attention. And death reminds you that there's nothing trivial in life whatsoever. I'm just sitting here, right, doing absolutely nothing, and I might think I'm safe. I could just swallow things wrong. I could, swallow my own spit and get it into my lungs and choke and die.
Mm.
Death is always nearby, right? So when we understand this, and also death tells you, what are you actually doing with your life that really makes a difference? Yes, you're pursuing wealth and fame and attention and blah, blah. When you get it, then what? Have you actually accomplished anything? No, nothing. Yeah, because there is more than that stuff. That stuff doesn't get you very far at all, right? When you can answer, and then what? Now you're getting somewhere. And death reminds you of that, and then what? Death reminds you there's more than the nonsense that we believe is the be-all and end-all of life, right? So when we understand this and we live with death consciously, it changes your entire life, right? It not only makes you deliberate, makes you sharp, makes you aware, it also makes you profound. It also connects you to moreness. Yeah? It leverages your intent, in other words. Very, very powerful, ridiculously powerful. Yes, Beena? Make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Very, very big deal. All right. Then Don Juan became serious again and said that if I did not think of my death, my entire life would be only a personal chaos. I'm going to put this in my quote file. So I recommend this, by the way, not just with this book, but with any book. Yes. And now you're going to see it today because I'm screening the whole screen share. You can see it, right, Beena?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, I can
So
see
I
this.
make a file where I pull these quotes from, right? And then I'm going to sort them by category. And that makes a very big difference, right? So I put in here, book 2, I think this is on page 51, yeah, it's more or less. But later on, I'm going to, in these columns here, I'm going to say Warrior's Way, Death, right? And then sorted by the categories, yeah? And this is very potent because Don Juan says a lot of things about death. But when you see them all together, changes your perspective on it. And very, very, very powerful. Yeah. So taking good notes, that's putting it into a spreadsheet. Why? Because it's nice and easy to sort by the columns. So it's very useful, right? I've done this before with Carlos's works, yeah. And I sorted them in different ways. It's a huge, huge job, a big task, yeah. Anyway, very powerful. And I do it with my own works as well. I have my own quote file, which, like this is, Biala's series quote file. See up at the top here, all right, those are tags. But, I mean, there's tons of stuff in here. I mean, just, and you put all this together and you start sorting this, you get profound value, right? So, again, it's about usefulness and value. Not about memory or remembering stuff. Memory doesn't really help you very much. Yeah? Rain Man. Remember the movie Rain Man? If you don't know it, then go and look it up. It's a very good movie. Dustin Hoffman, right? Very powerful movie. Really excellent movie. But Rain Man, he knew everything, but he was an idiot. Literally, right? He was unfunctional in his life. So, and he could remember everything, but he couldn't function, right? Couldn't function. So memory, we have to understand, knowing stuff, being having ability and accomplishment. This is about your ability to figure out stuff, your ability to be able to adapt, your ability to learn, to grow. That's what matters, not what you remember, right? Your character affects all of that. For instance, things like patience and integrity. Yeah, patience is a superpower. It's a ridiculous superpower. If you don't have patience, you're never going to accomplish or achieve anything because, most things, they take time, right? All right, so I'll read that again. Don Juan became serious again and said that if I did not think of my death, my entire life would be only a personal chaos. I ask you, people watching and listening, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, all the places, we are live right there now. Anybody watching? There's a whole bunch of you on TikTok. Can you honestly say that your life is not a personal chaos? Is your life? Big question, big question, big question, right?
Yes.
The point and purpose of Way-of-Impeccability, which is the core foundational program or the core foundational philosophy that underlies Moreness-Culture. Yeah? Its subtitle is a toolbox for deliberate living. Yeah? We want to have the tools for deliberate living. Yeah, that's what we're about. Moreness-Culture is based on this, right? And Way-of-Impeccability, the end point of it is attunement. You get all these tools that allows you not only to live deliberately, but to live in attunement, which is the ultimate deliberateness. It's a bit of a peculiarity there because you are giving over your own decision-making to a moreness. Yeah? But you're deliberately doing so. Very profound. Anyway, that's a big, 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 big topic which I want to touch on now. We'll get into it as we go through this. Carlos, Don Juan continues. He says, what else can a man have except his life and his death? Now, let me read that again because I try not to keep saying man because they're only man, but I like to read person. It's just moreness, right? We don't want to perpetuate inadvertent misogyny. That's what happens. Yeah? What else can a person have except their life and their death? That's a magical question. That's all we have, really. Yes, our life and our death. This is very stern here now. At that point, I felt it was indispensable to take notes, and I began writing again. Carlos is ridiculously insecure as an individual. So the notes, it gives him a kind of security, right? So he's Linus blanket, in other words, right? If you don't know what Linus blanket is, again, use Google. Linus from the character in Peanuts. Linus blanket. But it's a term. It's become something, right? Don Genaro stared at me and smiled. Then he tilted his head back a little and opened his nostrils. He apparently had remarkable control over the muscles operating his nostrils because they opened up to perhaps twice their normal size. What was most comical about his clowning was not so much his gestures as his own reactions to them. After he enlarged his nostrils, he tumbled down laughing and worked his body again into the same strange sitting on his head upside down posture. Don Juan laughed until tears rolled down his cheeks. I felt a bit embarrassed and laughed nervously. Genaro doesn't like writing, Don Juan said as an explanation. I put my notes away, but Don Genaro assured me that it was all right to write because he did not really mind it. I gathered my notes again and began writing. He repeated the same hilarious motions, and both of them had the same reactions again. In other words here, right, when we look at this through point of intent, Carlos isn't getting it. It's not that he minds the writing itself, poor expression by Don Juan somewhat. It is that the logic, the rationale, the intent of the writing is off. That's the issue. Yes, Beena? Make sense?
Yes.
Beena?
Yes.
Right. You started off when your thought of the day, it revolved around intent. And as you're setting the
Yes.
tone, right? So when we're paying
Yes.
attention to the intent, this is the issue for Carlos. He doesn't literally mind the writing. What they are there to assist Carlos in his journey of learning and growing, particularly as an apprentice of their lineage, right? Because it's their lineage. Carlos is part of Don Juan's party, right? Yes, Don Juan is the kind of leader of the party, but that doesn't mean that Carlos is Don Juan's apprentice, but it doesn't mean that the members of his party are not equally engaged in getting Carlos to be where he needs to be. Yeah. So Don Genaro is profoundly looking to assist Carlos. If the writing is just on a pure psychological point, is a Linus blanket for his insecurity, which in other words, it's something that makes you feel secure, but it makes you vulnerable and it makes you weak because you're relying on it all the time, right? And that's not very healthy. And furthermore, this idea that Carlos has that the notes are going to help him. Yes, the notes are for our benefit. It's the greater intent of the universe, because otherwise we don't have the books, right? So there's a moreness involved. But still, look at it from Don Genaro's point of view. He's looking to make Carlos aware of something very profound, right? And he's looking to break Carlos's worldview. Now, in the first part of the apprenticeship, all the power plants that Don Juan gave to Carlos, that was the intent of them, right? To crack his worldview. Don Juan even said so. He says it more clearly later on, right? But now, Don Genaro, by doing these peculiar antics of his, we're going to understand later on in what context Don Genaro is doing this. It's a big deal and there's a lot involved with it. We'll get there later on. But he's leveraging Carlos, right? To break Carlos's worldview. But Carlos is extraordinarily stuck in his worldview. Again, the intent of the universe. It picked Carlos as an apprentice because he is so extraordinarily stuck in his worldview, which means we get to get the full range of all of Don Juan and Don Genaro and the other members of their party. We get the full range of all that they bring to bear. Otherwise, if we got it, it would be a very short book, right? I became Don Juan's apprentice. I understood what his was. I learned how to perceive. End of book. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. See? So there's some magic here. Look at the moreness, right? Yeah. Perhaps you don't think it's funny, Don Juan said, but only Genaro can work his way up to sitting on his head, and only you can think of learning to be a sorcerer by writing your way up. Yeah. See, there's Don Juan specifies now the symbolic, metaphoric moreness of the entire action. They both had another explosion of laughter, and Don Genaro repeated his incredible movement. I liked him. There was so much grace and directness to his acts. My apologies, Don Genaro, I said, pointing to my writing pad. It's all right, he said, and chuckled again. I could not write any more. They went on talking for a very long time about how plants could actually kill and how sorcerers use plants in that capacity. Both of them kept staring at me while they talked, as if they expected me to write. Carlos is like a horse that doesn't like to be saddled, Don Juan said. You have to be very slow with him. You scared him, and I not right. I know they talk about Don Carlos like he's a chicken. You know what I mean? Or like some pet, and like he's sort of like a baby, and he is in a way, right? It's most it's most amusing. uh, You scared him, and now you won't write. Don Genaro expanded his nostrils and said in a mocking plea, frowning and puckering his mouth, "Come on, Carlitos, write. Write until your thumbs fall off." Don Juan stood up, stretching his arms and arching his back. In spite of his advanced age, his body seemed to be powerful and limber. He went to the bushes at the side of the house, and I was left alone with Don Genaro. He looked at me, and I moved my eyes away because he made me feel embarrassed. He's insecurity again. "Don't tell me you're not even going to look at me," he said in the most hilarious intonation. He opened his nostrils and made them quiver. Then he stood up and repeated Don Juan's movements, arching his back and stretching his arms, but with his body contorted into a most ludicrous position. It was truly an incredible gesture that combined an exquisite sense of pantomime and a sense of the ridiculous. It enthralled me. It was a masterful caricature of Don Juan. Don Juan came back at that moment and caught the gesture and obviously the meaning also. He sat down chuckling. Which direction is the wind? Don Genaro asked casually. I didn't read that very casually. Which direction is the wind? Don Genaro asked casually. Don Juan pointed to the west with a movement of his head. I better go where the wind blows, Don Genaro said with a serious expression. He then turned and shook his finger at me. And don't you pay any attention if you hear strange noises. When Genaro sits, the mountains tremble. He leaped into the bushes, and a moment later I heard a very strange noise, a deep, unearthly rumble. I did not know what to make of it. I looked at Don Juan for a clue, but he was doubled over with laughter. All right, there's there's so much moreness to all this, but it's coming later. So we just have to put it aside. There is going to come a point in time where we'll look at Don Genaro's behavior from an entirely different context, and it will fall into place, right? But at this point, understand that there's a deliberateness here, right? October 17, 1968. I don't remember what prompted Don Genaro to tell me about the arrangement of the other world in inverted commas, as he called it. He said that a master sorcerer was an eagle, or rather that he could make himself into an eagle. On the other hand, an evil sorcerer was a tecolote, an owl. Now this is very interesting, this word tecolote. I don't know, maybe it's pronounced differently, right? But tecolote is very similar to tokolosh, which is an Southern African term. I don't know how far up it goes in Africa, but definitely in Southern Africa. That is common between the different tribes. And Tokolosh is kind of what he's talking about here, a mischief maker, right? Somebody who causes trouble, right? And so just a troublemaker. I mean, in most cultures you've got something similar. Kokopelli, Pan, all similar. I mean, they can be fun, but they can also be kind of evil, right? So Tokolosh, are very similar, right? This is really fascinating to me, how you've got similarities all around the world. Yeah? And I pay attention to those, because we tend to have a worldview that's very cultural. Our world is the world, you know? I mean, especially in America. America is the world, according to Americans. No, it's not, right? There's a lot more to the world than just what your culture says there is. And it's very, very helpful to see things globally, right? And then to go even further than that and see things universally, right? Don Genaro said that an evil sorcerer was a child of the night. And Tokolosh, and these things, are usually depicted as a small, tiny little thing, right? I actually had an experience of it once, but that's another story. It was very interesting. Just a small little creature, right? Was a child of the night, and for such a man, the most useful animals were the mountain lion or other wild cats, or the night birds, especially the owl. He said that the brujos lyricos, lyric sorcerers, meaning the dilettante sorcerers, preferred other animals, a crow, for example. Yeah, so Congenaro knows that Don Juan is a crow. So he started making this whole serious speech, but he throws in, oh, the dilettante sorcerers like to be a crow, right? Well, Don Juan, right. He's just teasing Don Juan. Don Juan laughed. He had been listening in silence. Don Genaro turned to him and said, that's true. You know that, Juan. Then he said that a master sorcerer could take his disciple on a journey with him and actually pass through the 10 layers of the other world. The master, provided that he was an eagle, could start at the very bottom layer and then go through each successive world until he reached the top. Evil sorcerers and dilettantes could, at best, he said, go through only 3 layers. Don Genaro gave us a description of what those steps were by saying, you start at the very bottom, and then your teacher takes you with them and their flight, and soon, boom, you go through the very first layer. Then a little while later, boom, you go through the second, and boom, you go through the third. Don Genaro took me through 10 booms to the last layer of the world. When he had finished talking, Don Juan looked at me and smiled knowingly. Talking is not Genaro's predilection, he said, but if you care to get a lesson, he will teach you about the equilibrium of things. Let's pay very careful attention here. Let's pay very careful attention here. Yes, Don Juan is using a very profound term. He will teach you about the equilibrium of things. Yeah, we've not heard this from Don Juan before. And Don Juan is not given to using terminology in this way. Yes, it's part of Moreness-Culture, the dictionary of power. Yeah, the language of conceptionality is very profound. And this is taking what Don Juan and Genaro do going further. But here's a good example of why it's so important. The equilibrium of things. So now we've already been told, Carlos, pay attention. You are getting a lesson of something that's in the abstract, yes? It's not the literal equilibrium of things, balancing stuff, right? Obviously, it's figurative, metaphorical. It's abstract. It may involve literal equilibrium, but it's the moreness, right? It's a big clue. Yes, Beena? Make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Talking is not Genaro's predilection, but if you care to get a lesson, now also, Don Juan has prefaced this by saying talking is not Genaro's predilection. In other words, Genaro is going to give you a lesson, but he's going to show it to you directly. Yes, you're going to talk about the lesson. You're going to get it viscerally, directly. Yes, in a different way than talking. Yeah? Don Genaro nodded affirmatively. And just keep Don Genaro's spirit in mind. He's very naughty. Yes, he likes to tease, but
Yes.
no matter how much he teases, there's a seriousness to Don Genaro that is as serious as Don Juan. They have different ways of coming at it, but their sobriety is unparalleled. There's an intent behind what Don Genaro is doing. Yes, Don Genaro is basically completely disrupting Carlos's worldview. The humor and the teasing is to ameliorate the profound seriousness of this cracking of Don Juan, of Carlos's worldview. Yeah, with Don Juan, it was so serious it scared Carlos, and it made him uncomfortable and nervous. But Carlos can handle a lot when he thinks, or at least when it's on the surface, joking and funny, because Carlos is very superficial. Yeah. So the humor is a much better way of coming at Carlos than any other way. As much as Carlos thinks he's all serious and intellectual, he can't handle it. Right? His mind cracks. He gets stuck and he gets fearful and he retreats into his bubbles and he does all sorts of things that are not good. But this is a very powerful psychological technique of bringing the profound to Carlos via humor. Yes. It's really something special and magical. So I want you to keep this in mind. Yes, that when we understand this, no matter how irreverent Don Genaro is, because that's the best way to describe him, he's profoundly irreverent. And I think Don Juan might even say this, but at the same time, he is profoundly sober. His sobriety is unparalleled. Yes, Beena?
Yes. I was just saying that, this idea of using humor in this serious matter, like super serious matter,
Yeah.
is quite radical, because
Exactly.
according to, you will say, a should mindset, that we have this understanding that, okay, when it is profound, when it is serious, when it's like really involve your life and awareness, it can't be humorous. So Carlos was just coming from this idea, and they are really, okay, not in a fun way, but they are playing with him, playing his mindset at least.
Exactly. Because it's the only way they can really connect to Carlos. He's too inherently stiff to be able to handle seriousness, right? Directly. He has to come at it through this way. Yeah, he's too self-important. Yeah. The sophistication involved is profound. That's what I want to point to. Yes. We are getting their language via a translation. I mean, first of all, Spanish is not either of theirs first language. Doesn't matter. Don Juan's Spanish is the most sophisticated and most articulate Spanish Carlos has ever heard. And he grew up in South America, right? So Spanish is his first language. But he's also come to be exceedingly fluent in English, right? But what I'm saying is, when we look at their sophistication via their actions, yeah, we see something else, right? Even though the expression, yes, at least from Moreness-Culture and Way-of-Impeccability, we used to as a very sophisticated language usage, because the psychology of language and how it relates to learning and our self-conception, everything, this is a whole new thing that gets added to all of this. But that's going further, right? Which is what we do in Moreness-Culture. We've taken this and gone further, right? It's the massive sophistication that we're bringing here as part of our capital R reading, right? So as profound and more and wonderful as Don Juan and Genaro is, it doesn't mean that there's all to it. And they will tell you this too. You've got to take it further. Don Juan says this very specifically later on. You'll see. All right. So let's continue. Don Genaro nodded affirmatively. He puckered up his mouth and closed his eyelids halfway. I thought his gesture was delightful. Don Genaro stood up, and so did Don Juan. All right, Don Genaro said. Let's go then. We could go and wait for... Oh, he's saying this. We could go and wait for Nesta and Pablito. They're through now. Nesta and Pablito are Don Genaro's apprentices. They're through now. On Thursdays, they're through early. Both of them got into my car. Now, Carlos doesn't actually introduce Nesta and Pablito here. We will find this out later on, right? I mean, he doesn't give any explanation for Nesta and Pablito here, which from a writing point of view, you're introducing new characters, and you don't. I mean, yeah, it's not meant to be a story. It's it's a autobiographical thing, right? He's talking about stuff that actually happened. But even so, yes, it's like you just don't give any explanation for them. But all right. Both of them got into my car. Don Juan sat in the front. I did not ask them anything, but simply started the engine. Don Juan directed me to a place he said was Nesta's home. Don Genaro went into the house, and a while later came out with Nesta and Pablito, two young men who were his apprentices. Yeah, he's saying it now. All right, very good. They all got in my car, and Don Juan told me to take the road toward the western mountains. We left my car at the side of the dirt road and walked along the bank of a river, which was perhaps 15 or 20 feet across. 15 or 20 feet across. Wow. That's fairly sizable stream. All right. Not small. It's not like you can just step over it. To a waterfall that was visible from where I had parked. It was late afternoon. The scenery was quite impressive. Directly above us, there was a huge, dark, bluish cloud that looked like a floating roof. It had a well-defined edge and was shaped like an enormous half circle. To the west, on the high mountains of the Cordillera Central, the rain seemed to be descending on the slopes. It looked like a whitish curtain falling on the green peaks. To the east, there was a long, deep valley. To the east, there was the long, deep valley. There were only scattered clouds over the valley, and the sun was shining there. The contrast between the two areas was magnificent. We stopped at the bottom of the waterfall. It was perhaps 150 feet high. The roar was very loud. Don Genaro fastened a belt around his waist. He had at least 7 items hanging from it. They looked like small gourds. He took off his hat and let it hang on the back from a cord tied around his neck. He put on a headband that he took from a pouch made of a thick wool fabric. The headband was also made of wool of various colors. A sharp yellow was the most prominent of them. He inserted 3 feathers into the headband. They seemed to be eagle feathers. I noticed that the places where he had inserted them were not symmetrical. One feather was above the back curve of his right ear, the other was a few inches to the front, and the third was over his left temple. Then he took off his sandals, hooked or tied them to the waist of his trousers, and fastened his belt over his poncho. The belt seemed to be made of woven strips of leather. I could not see whether he tied it or buckled it. Don Genaro walked towards the waterfall. Don Juan manipulated a round rock into a steady position and sat down on it. The 2 other young men did the same with some rocks and sat down to his left. Don Juan pointed to the place next to him on his right side and told me to bring a rock and sit by him. We must make a line here, he said, showing me that the 3 were sitting in a row. By then, Don Genaro reached the very bottom of the waterfall and then had begun climbing a trail to the right side of it. From where we were sitting, the trail looked fairly steep. There were a lot of shrubs he used as railings. At one moment, he seemed to lose his footing and almost slid down, as if the dirt was slippery. A moment later, the same thing happened, and the thought crossed my mind that perhaps Don Genaro was too old to be climbing. All right, pay attention to Carlos's interpretation of things. Yes, Carlos, you're dealing with men of power. Yeah? And again, don't assume this point that you see the slipping. Carlos interprets it according to his regular worldview. Everything they do is deliberate. If Don Genaro is slipping, he's deliberately slipping. Right? Yeah, I saw him slipping and stumbling several times before he reached the spot where the trail ended. I experienced a sort of apprehension when he began to climb the rocks. I could not figure out what he was going to do. What's he doing? I asked Don Juan in a whisper. Don Juan did not look at me. Obviously, he's climbing. Don Juan was looking straight at Don Genaro. His gaze was fixed. His eyelids were half closed. He was sitting very erect with his hands resting between his legs on the edge of the rock. I leaned over a little bit to see the two young men. Don Juan made an imperative gesture with his hand to get me back in line. I retreated immediately. I had only a glimpse of the young men. They seemed to be as attentive as he was. Carlos is very oblivious to cues. Why? Because Carlos, in his insecurity, is also profoundly arrogant. Right? He thinks his way of doing things, which is, yes, I'm an observer, I'm an anthropologist, he's not paying attention, he's not being cued by the environment because he sets his own agendas above that of the environment of context. Yeah? And this is not good at all. Yeah? Not good at all. Not a good idea, because he misses so much because of his inappropriateness to pay attention to contextual environmental cueing. As he's not living in attunement, and there's no understanding of living in attunement, which Don Juan and the apprentices do have. I want to pause here because this whole waterfall deal, there's a moreness to this whole story, right? This whole incident here. And I want to have it all together, right? So we at the start of it, more or less, and we'll continue there tomorrow. There's a big deal coming here, and I don't want to give a spoiler, right? But I just want to start this tomorrow. This is very, very cool.
It's a good point. It's a good point, and also we are on time. We are trying to keep it in an hour.
Yes.
So under an hour,
yeah.
This is something. Yes, we are practicing because we have something coming in near future. And we are practicing for that. So this is all part of these things. Thank you so much, Syl, for sharing that. And also, it's like really, I felt that that it was popping my bubble also, because I'm a person who, whenever gets into this serious thing, I really get into serious, because for me, valuable things are serious. Okay, yes, especially about awareness. Specifically, you can say, not especially, specifically about awareness. I do have this idea that okay, it has to be serious, it has to be very, very precise and very accurate, no nonsense, no other things involved into that, because they all create distraction. And whenever I get into that absorbing mode, I look like that I'm on a snooze mode, because I feel like, because I don't have a control on my expression, that oh, I must look alert, I must smile, I must say this and that, because I'm on my perceiving mood, which seem like on surface, like visually, like I'm might be just not paying attention, or I'm getting bored, or I'm like really sleeping and all that. But for me, that is something. It popped my bubble that okay, you have to be alert and not assume that it is going to be in that way only. I had also had this idea that serious things like, okay, needs to be serious, valuable things need to be serious, but it can be fun also. And also that we have no authority, no power over to box things, especially coming from people like Don Juan or Don Genaro. How can we box them that they have to be like this, because they don't have the superiority mindset.
Exactly. They are outside of our comprehension.
Exactly. And also they
Yeah,
don't have the
Carlos does.
superiority ideas that, oh, I must act in that
Exactly.
particular way.
Exactly.
So really, it got my
Important
bubble
here.
tip.
Sorry, Beena. Can
No,
you
no,
hold
please.
that pause 1 second? No,
Yes,
because
please.
a global super administrator in TikTok said no. And I'm not sure what it was no to. I missed, when your comment came to what it was connected to. Could you give me context to what the no was connected to? Please, global super administrator. Yeah, it's just disconnected and it's waiting to reconnect. I'm keen to hear what that no was about. So,
Oh, yes.
global
Oh,
super
yes.
administrator, in case you didn't hear me, you said no, and I'm keen to know what your no was in reference to. We love
And
comments, we absolutely love them,
yes.
and we pay attention to
Joseph.
them. They're very important
Hello,
to us.
Joseph. Sorry to interrupt you, Syl, but Joseph is also
Brilliant,
here.
brilliant, brilliant.
I was thinking about you,
Yeah,
Joseph. I was missing you. Okay, I was not, but I
yeah,
was missing. And I was thinking about you
yeah.
just when I was beginning, like in the beginning of this session. And I was like, oh, where is Joseph? It's been days now. So, yes, I don't know what he comment, but I can just only
Okay,
say that.
so there's a very cool comment here. Capital
Yes.
DL, doing laundry. In the Yaqui cousin language, there is a way of doing the capital concept. It was the capitalized concept when we say capital R reading or capital T trust. It is saying that this word, like trust, has an enhanced meaning, right? It's
Hmm.
more or less the same, but it's an enhanced meaning, right? And he says
Hmm.
there's a similarity in the native languages, at least the language that he speaks, because he's calling Yaqui a cousin language, which I like that, right? If you
Hmm.
say si in front of a word, I don't know if it's si or sai in front of a word, then it means very or more deeper, or sure, as in I'm sure happy, right? Then, if you want to even make it more or deeper, you can use sashi, saishi, Shaisi, Saisi, Shai, Shaisi, Sha, Shaisi, Shaisi, Shaisi. So it's not shy, it's Shaisi, right. So the what normally would be a diphthong is actually the vowels are separated, right? The AI, it's Shaisi, Shaisi in front of a word like sagik, equal fat, sigik, very fat. Saisi, sagik, extremely fat, or it can only be used with verbs, right? Very useful, very useful. This is very nice to know. But yes, most languages have a way of differentiating and making something and letting you know that there's a more, which is italicized, but we usually hear this from tone and intonation, right? When we say, oh, like I could say, well, I look at something and say, oh, that's cool, right? Expression and emphasis. So, but we need to have a way, especially when you have written languages, we need to have a way to indicate that. But also we realize that language is very complex and that what we typically take a word to mean, it can have a deeper meaning to it, right? And this is where the capital comes from, that deeper, moreness meaning to it, when you think it through. It's very powerful. So this is a way of saying, to say si or saisi is an emphasis to say more or deeper, extra. Yeah, very cool, very cool. Love this. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to see you here again, man. We missed you for a while. I know we were off also. So just, our life goes. Our life goes. Yeah, doing laundry. Exactly. Sometimes you got to do your laundry in life. Yeah, your life laundry. And that's what we were doing a bit. So Global Super Administrator, I'm very keen to know what your no was too about. I think I missed you. And Joseph asked a very profound question. By the way, Joseph, 2 nights ago, I had some conscious dreaming, and I haven't done this for a long time. In other words, capital D dreaming, right? Don Juan's dreaming, where you're aware in your dream, or lucid dreaming. I haven't had this for a long time. I used to in the past. I was very focused on it. Been all my life, but it's just been a while. So it was very exciting. But Joseph asks Beena. Joseph asks Beena, do you ever dream in English?
This is very interesting because in dreams we don't have any language. We don't need that. We communicate via
Yeah,
awareness. As far as I have this experience, because it is something like you just understand. I never heard
yeah,
someone speaking like, okay, I assume, okay, it's a kind of an assumption thing. Like someone has some intent and you understand that intent. oh, someone was saying something and you understood that, because I don't hear
Yes.
voices. I perceive voices. Yes, I can say that. And we perceive their intents. So my dreams, okay, I always have that universal language, intent, awareness. Never experienced that. Have you ever,
Right.
Joseph, have you ever in Yaki or in English or in any other language? Have you ever experienced that? For me, and this is
Experience
something
what?
was I was sharing with Syl before, like, okay, I don't know, a few weeks ago I was sharing that
Yeah.
I never actually, because for me the language of dreams is awareness. You become aware of someone, what they are saying, what they are doing. It is just
Yes.
something that you,
Yes.
so you cannot lie, you cannot do anything, like, okay, you
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, very interesting.
Although, Joseph, if I'm understanding correctly, Beena, you
Yes.
shifted to thinking in English a long time ago, yeah?
This is something, yes, okay, in the beginning the process was like that, that my mind was
Translating.
translating all these things, but
Right.
now it's a shift when I communicate, and the shift is really interesting for me also, because I cannot speak fluently if someone is not speaking in English with me. This is how my mind is working. If they are
Isn't
talking in
that
Urdu,
amazing?
I'm
Yeah.
talking in Urdu.
Yeah.
If they are talking okay, some regional language, I talk to them. When someone start talking in English, my mind switch immediately. So the process is so
Yeah.
fluent now, so speedy,
Yeah.
that I cannot even notice that. The translation was
Right.
process was in the beginning. And even in that moment, like in that phase, mostly it was like trying to understand the verbs and the grammar, which still bites me every now and then. Of course, you can notice that, of course, as a teacher.
Yes.
But it was the grammar. The understanding was still
Yes.
there. For me, the translation process was, even in the beginning, was very quick. Was very quick, very
Yeah.
rapid type thing.
Yeah.
But the
But
grammar,
again,
no
because
problem. Yes.
right, right. But see, what shifted Bina was because right from the very beginning, I connected, and when we started interacting, I emphasized language of conceptionality, that we were talking about conceptions. And in order to understand the conception, you're going into the depth, the moreness, and the wholeness of it, right? And in order to really grasp the moreness of things, when you start to think conceptually, everything changes. And it makes learning a language profoundly different. So even though your English grammar might not be 100%, your command of
Yes.
English from a communication and expression point of view is most excellent. You are able to not only be articulate, but you are able to elucidate. Why? Because you have conceptual language. Yes,
Yes. Yes.
not the ordinary language of being able to just name things and no. So very different.
Yes.
Uh,
And also,
so
I just want to
so
add something,
yeah,
Sil. Just want to add
I'm
something.
coming, Joseph, to your point about dreams. I just want to finish about language. Keep going, Bina.
Yes, I just because it was a very deliberate intent also involved into that, because grammar was really biting me. I was calling those does, did, and do as really annoying puppies, that which really bites me. And I was like, okay, they still bite me. But it was a deliberate intent that I'm not going to focus on that, because otherwise I would lose that, because it was like a river. It was like a really spring of coming towards me. The gush, the awareness, it was like so much. And if I would get into that, okay, oh, my grammar is not, I'm going to just focus on that thing, those things, I would lose a lot. So it was a deliberate intent that I'm not going to focus on, pay attention to my pronunciation, accent. Of course, I do have a very heavy accent, and also my grammar, because even without that I can survive, because it was so much for me, which was coming from, of course, way of impeccability, from self, from Moreness-Culture, and of course from other sources. So a lot was
Yeah.
coming towards me, and at that time I deliberately set intent, I'm not going to be like, okay, really shy for my heavy accent or for my wrong grammar or my pronunciation, because I learned this language by reading. This was a start. So a lot of words I'm aware of the concept behind them, but I don't know how to pronounce them, because I never share with, I never heard from anyone. This is
Yeah.
how the whole process of learning. was for me. And I'm happy with that. That
Very
I
powerful.
was a good
Right.
intent. It was a very good intent, very, very beneficial for me.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, you have a whole different worldview because you have this language of conceptionality. And it's incredibly powerful. And now we're going to apply this in terms of what Joseph was saying, right?
Yeah.
He says, I call them medicine dreams, right? As opposed to ordinary dreams. But yes, conceptionality, yes, coming into it. We conceive of dreams and, well, they're just dreams. But then we have a medicine dream or a vision dream or a power dream, which is a different thing. But we can take that further. Right? There are more categories of dreams, right? As in terms of deliberate, intentional dreaming, where you are aware you are dreaming, and that's what the dream was. I'm aware that I'm dreaming, and as such, the focus was on being aware and maintaining the awareness in the dream. Now, what is the difference in an ordinary dream and a power dream or a medicine dream or a vision dream? This is the quality of the content. Ordinary dreams are they kind of jumble, they're random, they don't have any moreness to them, and you feel it. And it's like life too. Yes, we go through life, but when you encounter an anomaly in life, this is the equivalent of a power dream. This is a communication from the universe, from spirit, from moreness, from whatever you want to call it, right? That has moreness to it. Yeah. But when we look at dreams, though, a power dream or a medicine dream or a vision dream, it's still coming from somewhere. Whereas a deliberate dream is you engaging in the dream world and learning to interact with the dream world in a way similar to the way we do in our regular life, right? It's not quite exactly the same, but it's similar. In other words, you have agency. You have deliberateness. You can say, I'm looking at this, I'm aware I'm looking at this, and you can choose what you do. Whereas most of our dreams, we think we're deciding, but it's really like we're watching a movie of ourselves where we are, well, experiencing a movie of ourselves, right? So this is exactly, lucid dreaming is the more modern term for it, right? And in lucid dreaming, if you look into lucid dreaming, the category, the focus is on being aware in the dream, but really their intent of it, the longer term intent, is mostly just kind of for fun and joy and pleasure. There's not a deeper spiritual deal to it. And with Don Juan is going to later on encourage Carlos to do lucid dreaming. Yeah? And he has a particular technique. He says, look at your hands. It's not the only technique, many techniques, and you can get into lucid dreaming. But for Don Juan, there is a massively profound spiritual value to this, right? So you are learning to be aware of your dreams in order to be able to do things, right, later. But first you need to have the control, otherwise you aren't able to get there. Right? So it's a process, it's a step. Right? And that's what I had. There was no real content. I was just in this massive, big, long. It was basically like a town or a small city uh, in one building. It was quite amazing, but that wasn't the issue. It was just, and it was, at one point, how can I actually get outside? And I did get outside, and there was a bunch of weird animals in this kind of like a baskety buckety thing. But that wasn't the point, though. The focus was on, hey, I'm aware, and I realized, hey, I'm dreaming, and it's been a long time, and it's something I make an effort to do every single night. I hadn't given up ever, but it's been a long time, so I was very happy with that. But it came again. I don't know what the factors are involved. I did it as a young man. I set the task of being able to do this, and I put extraordinary effort into it. I mean, literally remembering this every single second of the day, right? And that pressed through my subconscious or whatever and got there. But it was so much effort. I mean, I could do it at will, but man, it took an enormous amount of effort. So it wasn't sustainable, and I never gave up the desire for it. But I figured when the time is right, it will come, right? And just attunement, and said, this isn't my path. And we'll see this later on, right? Different paths. So from Don Juan's point of view, you got dreamers and stalkers and intenders. Well, I'm very much a stalker and somewhat of an intender. Dreaming is not so much on my path. Doesn't mean that I mustn't learn to do it. Just, other ways to go about things. So this is very powerful. But yeah, there was no moreness content to the dream. I have known people, lived with somebody for a long time who had power dreams and vision dreams, and it's very remarkable. It was really quite special, quite extraordinary. And Beena has them also, and she has it even when not dreaming, like she was talking about earlier, perceiving energy directly, right? When she saw herself kind of as particles, as pixels, and all sorts of moreness. So yeah, Beena has that side of things. So very powerful, very powerful. Yeah, we come at things in different ways. It doesn't mean that we mustn't learn the other ways. We do. It just means we have predilections for paths, right? Very powerful.
Yes.
I'll talk more about it. So again, I'm sorry I missed your comment. Global super administrator. I love this. Global super administrator. I don't know what your comment, because it doesn't give me a timestamp here, so I can't even see that. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I can't go back and look later on. But all right, next time, GSA. We'll call you GSA, Global Super Administrator. Next time, GSA. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, we'll end it there, and we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
cool,
We will see
Joseph.
you
I
guys
want to hear some
before we
more.
go.
We're going to get into
Yes.
right now. We are focused on perceiving. Later, we're
Yes.
going to get into capital D dreaming, right? I mean, there's even one of the books, right? The Art of Dreaming. I think it's book number. It's not 877. I think it is. Anyway, it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal, or maybe it's book number 9 now that I think of it. Anyway, but it's a big topic for Don Juan, and we're going to get into it. But right now we're on capital P perceiving. This book is about capital perceiving, so I don't want to get too distracted on the dreaming because that comes later, right? And they're all connected. They're all connected, and we need to understand what makes them connected, right? The moreness to it, and the abstract understanding. Very, very important, right? Because we could get lost in the details. Yes, the details are important, but we can easily get lost in them, and we mustn't do this. We must maintain that overview. Very important, very important. All right, bye-bye, everybody. Beena, anything to finish with before
Yes.
we
No,
go?
just want to say that. Okay, thank you so much for joining us, and we are learning the TikTok also, because still we are newbie there. So please just bear with us, and we are learning, and we will be able to communicate on time with you. Anyway, just want to share that. Okay, as always, that please do pay attention to algorithms, and because they are patterns, and they create patterns also. So if you are here
Yeah,
and by chance you find some value, this is the time. We look for omens, we look for signs, and we say that, oh, universe was giving me signs. This is a sign that wherever you find value, if you find value, which means that, okay, this is what else you want, just be deliberate about, make it a deliberate choice, change it, change the randomness into a deliberate choice. This is the key.
yeah,
Yeah, just don't scroll things, don't find things like, oh yeah, this is one, this is one, this is one, because it is going to overwhelm, and it is going to be not accessible, not usable. We all have information, we all have
yeah,
knowledge, but really, is it really accessible? Is it applicable in your life? Is it usable? No, not necessarily. We all have so inspiring
yeah,
quotes and books have we have read, and of course quotes and memes and all sort of things, but it never changes our life because they are not accessible, they are not usable, they are not applicable, because we never make them deliberate choice. And the mechanism to make a deliberate
exactly.
choice is, of course, to click like on that. I'm saying that. I know that, okay, it
Yeah,
sounds like, oh, you are promoting your channel. Of course, I'm doing this because it's a requirement. I'm just maximizing my reach so I can share more. So please, if you
right.
find this
But
some
there's also
value,
a greater intent to your
exactly,
point about sharing, about training your
exactly.
life algorithm
Yes.
by the
So
10.
please do make a deliberate choice, because by doing so, you are going to train your online algorithm to give you more substance. Also, it is ultimately going to affect your life algorithm. They are kind of
Yeah,
same and they are connected. So please do pay attention to, if you want to improve your life, if you want to
yeah,
learn and grow in your life, which is the most basic intent for every human, everyone, every being. Please enhance your awareness. Make a deliberate choice. Click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, because it is going to be a reminder for you that you have something valuable
yeah,
coming for you. So thank you so much for joining us. We will see you guys tomorrow. Bye for now,
yeah.
Syl.
Joseph says Sam Haim,
Yes.
Samhain in Pakistan. Sam Haim.
Maybe I'm not getting it. or maybe the pronunciation is different.
S-A-M, S-A-M-H-A-I-N. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Samhim. Samhim. I am not aware of this word. Somehow, maybe
Curious.
this.
I don't know. I
Yes,
don't
we would
know.
love to.
What is it supposed to mean, Joseph?
Yes,
Is
please,
it
please
supposed to
share.
mean cute?
Just give me some clues, and then I can share.
Yeah, and then Joseph says Afrikaner Samaim. I don't know where Afrikaner comes into it because I'm not an Afrikaner, so I don't know where that comes in. Yes, I
Oh,
grew up in South Africa, but yeah, I mean, I grew up with English as my home language, Joseph, not Afrikaans. Afrikaners grew up Afrikaans as their language. Oh, Google says he gets it from Google, gets it from Google. But what is it supposed to mean, just to save us
just
time in
give
looking
a
at it up
yes,
ourselves?
yes.
Samhain, Samain. I
Ah,
don't know. I
so
can't see the connection, you know. Does it mean dreaming? Does it mean lucid dreaming? I don't know. Anyway, you know, Joseph, just because I grew up there, I cannot honestly say I am South African. I cannot honestly say this because I'm not. Oh, Halloween means Halloween. Oh, okay. Interesting.
oh, okay, yes. This is something like people just getting. It's a universal culture. This is a part of universal culture. In Pakistan
Yeah,
culture, originally, no, nothing like Halloween. In subcontinent culture, no, nothing like this. A variation, you can say that it is something that okay, some people have this idea that they're on particular day they do recite verses of Quran to gift people who are dead and they visit their graves and all these things, but nothing like Halloween at all. The concept of Halloween that okay at this time of the year the veil between the two worlds, that the world they are now and world we are now,
yeah,
become thinner, so you can
yeah,
have more awareness about this was the basic idea of the Halloween, and now people are just making it fun. And I really find it very funny that we assume that people there are going to be in these type of looks, which is like really seriously it's all about the soul there. So anyway, this is something
yeah,
very interesting for me. In Pakistan now the young population, which mostly they are living abroad, coming to Pakistan, visit Pakistan, and because they are very in much influenced with of course the culture they live in, they belong to that culture, so they do of course try to do something
yeah,
for
yeah.
Halloween also, but
They
it is
adopt
not
it
part of
somewhat.
the
Yeah,
culture. It is not in majority. It's very limited, mostly in the social
yeah,
media, especially media. People, celebrities, they want to connect because they have the connections there. Otherwise, it's not.
yeah,
At least right now, it is not a part of the culture. You cannot say that yes, it
yeah,
might become. Who
yeah.
knows? It might become at some point, but right now it is
Right.
not.
Right. And beside which, you know, I mean, Beena, for you and I, we have long since stopped being in any way really connected or representative of the cultures that we grew up in. I was never representative of it, even as a child. But now, I mean, the only culture I can say that I'm representative of is Moreness culture. Uh, Yeah, so it starts at sundown today. All right, very good. Yeah. So it's a very peculiar holiday, yes. Well, Halloween in America specifically. Most people are very disconnected to what it is. But just really for the average person, it's just well, just a fun time. It's just like party time, really. No, there's no real deeper spiritual significance to it. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
what it
mostly
is
people who are
significant
into
though in the
spirituality.
context of what Don Genaro was saying, right, with the 10 worlds and all this.
Yes,
We're going to hear lots more about the other world, right? Look, an alternate reality, and not just
yes.
other world singular, other world plural. Look, he said 10 worlds, right? And I think later on even more. You know, I mean, so just this whole idea of there being an other world. It's something that is a part of our deeper consciousness, but it's somewhat become so minimized. Even though there's a holiday that celebrates it, it's still not part of people's reality. And if you put most people on a lie detector and you think there's some other world, they'll probably say no. honestly. Yeah. Even if they say yes, they believe so, the lie detector will say, no, you don't really believe that. Right? So it's very powerful. Yeah. But in South Africa, I don't know if they will party now. Like Halloween is quite big in Australia, I believe, and some other countries. But again, it's more big in terms of dressing up and costumes and all of this stuff. Not big for the
Exactly.
actual spiritual side of it.
Yeah.
It was never a thing there. Maybe now, but again, I don't know. I haven't been there for a long time. And like I said, I never was representative of South African culture, and it's as I'm as connected to it as I am to Australian culture or Pakistani culture, India or any culture. I try and be connected to all of them. Yeah. Yeah, string series says there are 11 realities. Yes, yes, or dimensions. I actually I made a nice thing about dimensions. It's in my code file. Just when I took this idea of being 11 dimensions, and I connected to conceptionality, to the power conceptions. I'll tell you. I'll tell you in a moment. This is actually very, very powerful. Let me just search in my quote file. Yeah, dimensions of being. Let me screen share now, and then you can see what I'm talking about here. Ah, good, good, good. Yes, yes, the Saba. Very good. I gotta go. I gotta go in a minute, but I just want to share this real quick. Uh, there we go. All right. So we take this idea of 11, right? And we've got back and forth, across, up and down. Then we've got when, and we've got charge, energy, mood, awareness, intent, attunement, and impeccability. Isn't that cool, Joseph? I know, I thought it was kind of fun. And then you can have them as colors also. Well, the 7 colors, just put charge as, because the first ones are, those are dimensions in space and time. And then the other ones are dimensions of a more abstract connection. So when you take this, the 7, right? 7 and 4, you get charge, red root, energy, orange, sacral, mood, yellow, solar plexus, awareness, green heart, intent, blue throat, attunement, indigo, third eye, impeccability, violet crown, right? Yeah. Oh, that's a nice quote. Learn in such a way that memory is irrelevant. Yeah. Every entry in the Dictionary of Power is essentially a one conception philosophy. We're going to start reading the quotes because they are very powerful. But anyway, I thought this was a fun way of looking at, instead of just dimensions, but dimensions of being. Yeah, it's very cool. And when you really pay attention to this, charge, energy, mood, awareness, it's very, very transformative. It's a very, very big deal. Very helpful. Very helpful. Yeah. I know you have to go, but yeah, somebody's outside waiting for me, Joseph. I really do need to go. So very cool. All right, we'll continue tomorrow, Joseph.
Yes,
Hierarchy
yes,
of consciousness can be represented by colors. Yes, 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 yes. They can be, which is why I did that. See, up got dimensions of being and colors of being, and like I said, the first 4 are time and space, right? And then you get, which we all know. I mean, mostly when we think dimensions, we're back and forth, across, up and down, right? Okay. We forget about time as being a dimension. When you say where something, you need to say where in time as well. Yeah, that really matters. But then when we get to the other dimensions, now there's other things that come, like charge, energy. And I just put them in terms of dimensions of being. But now when you take those 7 and you add it on to, from 5 to 11, that's 7 there, right? It all kind of works together. It's just stuff that's not necessarily definitive, but useful. And that's the point. To me, it's about usefulness and value. Always, 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 always. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 Very cool. Very cool. All right, Joseph. We'll talk more tomorrow, man. We'll talk more tomorrow. We'll be here. We'll be here.
yes.
All
Thank
right.
you
Bye
so
bye,
much,
everybody.
everyone.
I have to go. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye
Yes,
bye.
bye for now. Bye for now.
Yeah. 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 Let me edit everything here now. Okay.